Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. And I guess we're going to try this again. For any of you guys that came in and saw we tried to start the show here, we ran into some technical difficulties. Those are primarily due to yours truly, who, I tried to set up some things a little bit different, and I think we've made it very clear that I should not be playing with buttons. I am technically disabled, I think, in some way, shape, or form. But we're here now, although albeit a little bit late, and better late than never. Lots of stuff happening. I was real excited today. I like soccer. Okay, so I'm going to admit to you guys, I'm a fan of soccer. I am a football player at heart. I played football. I love football. Football's always been my thing. But I am absolutely a football guy. But I am a fan of soccer, and I've been excited about the World Cup. You know, the U.S. Team USA has done real well this season. Or this session, and it's been good. You know, it's been fun to watch. It's been exciting. Didn't do well against Turkey, but the other games they did real well until tonight. Unfortunately, I was excited to kind of talk through the game a bit, but it's ended and we have lost. Unfortunately for Team USA, it was a pretty decisive loss, 1-4. I looked at the stats. Actually, X has a great thing. The way it shows the stats on X is pretty cool. Here, let me show you guys this. This is X. I could make this a little bit bigger here, but they kind of break down the stats for you here. And we were solid on ball possession, but having the ball doesn't mean much when you're 13 versus 3 shots. They had 3 blocks. We had 0 shots saved. It just across the board, we just didn't look that good. It's an unfortunate thing. I've been watching. I was never into soccer when I was a kid or anything. We didn't really have much soccer when I was a kid, but my kids got into it and played it quite a bit. And they were good, and I enjoyed watching. I got to learn the sport. It's a fun sport. It's a good sport. I get it. And too bad for Team USA. We could have used something to kind of rally the country around something, and we didn't quite get there. But it's been fun to go, and it's been a fun go, and it was awesome that America got to host it. Interestingly enough, if you guys have watched, a lot of people from around the world came to America, and there's so much anti-American sentiment around the world right now because a lot of these countries hate freedom and hate these tyrants and just scumbags, and have been talking so bad about America for a long time. There's been a lot of stories, if you've followed, about fans and people who've came to America, got to tour America, got to see America, and got to see that we're still a shining beacon of freedom on the hill, even if we're only holding on by a thread. And it's we still live in the greatest country in the world. It's unfortunate that over the last 20 years or more, we've kind of lost our pride in ourselves as a nation. We've kind of lost a lot of the good feelings that we had as a country, and a lot of that stems from political corruption, right? It's hard to be proud of your country when your country's so broken. I'll tell you guys, one of the things that was interesting for me with that, and kind of thinking along those lines, and kind of a personal story. When I was a kid, I always remember the first trip I made to Washington, D.C., and I remember seeing some of the monuments and some of the memorials, the Lincoln Memorial, the Vietnam Memorial. If you haven't seen it, is one of the most moving things ever to walk by, the plaque after the big walls, the big wall with the big plates, and it's just name after name, the thousands and thousands of Americans that died there. And to think about the fact that these guys, they went over there, they followed orders, they fought so bravely for our country. They came back. They were called baby killers. It was atrocious. It's fine to be against war. There's nothing wrong with being against war, but you always have to respect our soldiers. There's a lot of times I don't like war. I don't want us being at war. Didn't like the Iran war, but I'll tell you what, we owe a duty to our soldiers. Those guys follow orders. They go over there. They do what they have to do. They stand for our country. They keep us safe. And, Vietnam was a very unfortunate event where, instead of realizing that it's the politicians who are doing the stuff that we don't like, we actually protested the soldiers. And that's an awful thing. I hope that never happens again. But my point is that, the first time I went to D.C., and for a number of years when I would go to Washington, D.C., the pride I felt in my nation, the history, our Constitution, what it meant to stand for freedom. Yeah, I think about our forefathers. I think about George Washington. I think about these guys that literally fought the most powerful country in the world for their independence. They fought and earned their independence against a nation that nobody thought you could stand against at that point in time. And we earned it. We earned our independence. We earned our freedom. No taxation without representation. We demanded a representative form of government. We demanded that we had people that represented our interests. And I want you guys I want to ask you this. Do you really feel like our representatives represent us now? Do you really think our founding fathers would be happy with where we are compared to where we were? I mean, what we live in right now is in no way, shape, or form reflective of what our founding fathers fought for. So, now when I go to D.C., I kind of just want to throw up. Every time I go there, it feels dirty. It feels icky. I used to go there with such pride. The first time I got to go to Congress, and I was, to advocate for something is in my early 20s. And I was so proud when I got to sit in the House office buildings, waiting to talk to some of the Congress people. I was pushing for some stuff related to the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, trying to make some changes there that I thought would help our firemen and policemen with their communication systems. And it was such a proud moment for me. I'll never forget the first time I sat down with a elected official from the United States House of Representatives. And I sat down with the rep and I was talking to him about what I believed in. And it was such a powerful moment for me. I believed in our nation at that point. I still believed that we, the people, had a voice, and that if I did the right thing and if I was, pushed hard and fought hard, that we could have our voice heard. Now, at this point, we can see that, polling 90% of people distrust Big Pharma, and our elected officials don't give a damn because they're more interested in money than they are in anything else. The corruption's out of control. We, the people, are going to have to fight to take our country back. But despite all that, we still do have the greatest nation in the world. And I'm glad that a lot of people got to see that with the World Cup. A lot of people that came here and got to see that the people of America aren't necessarily a reflection of the crooked government officials in America. That we, the people who are part of this country, who believe in this country, who love this country, we aren't the same as these crooks running our country. We actually still are good people. We still take care of people. We still try and watch out for people. We still love each other. We still care about each other. We still believe in America. Even in the difference between right and left, there's still a lot of people on both sides that believe in America. Now, they may have different visions for government, but Americans still largely believe in America and want freedom. How we get there, well, that's up for debate. But one thing I think we can all agree on is that right now, what we're seeing is in no way, shape, or form reflective of what our founding fathers fought for. And I think we got to do some work to get that back. So anyways, lots to talk about tonight. Again, sorry for the loss, the World Cup loss. That's too bad. That's unfortunate. But it is what it is. Before I do, we need your support. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. Whatever you can give, we appreciate. Your support keeps us going. We're going to keep telling the truth, keep fighting for that country that our founding fathers fought for, and try and get us back there. God is our witness. We will keep doing that as long as it's necessary, and I pray that we get there soon. We also, if you can, go to TomRenz.com, www.TomRenz.com. Go up there to shop, click on partners and affiliates, and all these guys are great, all of them. Check out all of our partners, all of our affiliates. But especially tonight, we want to highlight men's hormone support, Global Healing, globalhealing.com/TomRenz. Use Renz at checkout for a discount. Global Healing is the best supplement market on the market. Love these guys. Great products, great solutions. The men's hormone support is one of my favorite. If you're a man and you're over 40, you need to be on this. Make sure you're checking it out. Globalhealing.com/TomRenz, or you can just click on our link at TomRenz.com, partners and affiliates. It's right there. All right, let's get on to some other things here. One of the big things interesting going on to me is today we see this big kerfluffle about Plattner. Plattner is, I mean, he's special, right? So this is a Democrat lunatic, and they pitted him up against Susan Collins in Maine. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is it doesn't matter who wins, the American people lose. With Susan Collins, you have the biggest rhino in the Senate. She is the worst of the worst of the worst. She's about as reliable a Republican vote as Mitch McConnell, actually less. And she's a Democrat, essentially. Just a little less lunatic and a little less communist than most Democrats. But she still carries that Republican moniker and keeps getting the Republican nomination up there because she keeps winning, because the people of Maine have two options, a Democrat light, which is Susan Collins, or a communist nutbag, like in this case, this Plattner guy. Now, Plattner is an interesting character, right? I've taken a look. Now, Plattner, you got this new sex assault allegation that they're making a big stink of to try and push him out of the race, right? And apparently, some woman who had dated Plattner accused him of forcing her to have sex in 2021. He says that he entered her home uninvited while he was drunk or intoxicated. She didn't want to do anything, and he kind of forced himself on her in some way, shape, or form. He's had listen, he's getting dumped by the Democrats right now in a big way. Prior to this, but this is interesting, right? Because this guy has always been a scumbag, and I'm going somewhere with this, so bear with me, folks. Plattner has always been a scumbag, right? He's had multiple ex-partners describe him as toxic, unsettling, horrible. They talk about him being demeaning, physical threats, all sorts of things. Just not been a good guy. He's got a bunch of old Reddit posts and other posts out there where he said some crazy things. He's got a chest tattoo that resembles some sort of a Nazi symbol. I don't know. Apparently, he covered it up later, but it looked like some sort of a Nazi symbol. He identified himself as a communist. He actually said, quote, "I got older and became communist." He describes himself as a, quote, "vegetable growing, psychedelics taking socialist." He's tied in with these Democrat Socialists of America, which is really this communist front group that Mamdani and a lot of these other Democrats are pushing. He's pushed for, quote, "an armed working class," and economic justice, anti-police, says all cops are bastard, anti-establishment. I mean, basically, he's a good Antifa guy. He's just a good Antifa guy. And so this guy has become a real threat to the Democrats. Like, he looks really, really bad. And the Democrats, nobody's talking about the fact that the Democrats are having kind of this civil war thing going on, right? You have the communists, literally the Communist Party, pushing to try and take over the Democrats. And there's not a whole lot of difference, right? The mainstream Democrats and the communists have become almost indistinguishable. There's really not much difference. And you're seeing a bunch of wins. Mamdani is a really big deal because the guy's a literal avowed commie. I mean, he's a nutbag. He's a radical Islamist. He's just everything bad that you can be, yet he's the mayor of New York. This is what the Democrats have done. They've pushed in some of these blue enclaves, they pushed left and left and left, and they finally gotten to the point where they're basically somewhere between communism and fascism, which is interesting because the left likes to say fascism's a right side thing. It's not. It's not at all. Fascism and communism are two different sides of the same coin. And in one case, you have reportedly private business running everything. The other, you have the parties running everything. But the private business running everything in a fascist entity is really, I mean, they're running the government. They control it. So it's not much different. It's very similar. But these are both, if you go far enough left, those ideologies tend to mix. They tend to mingle. And, it's interesting. Like I said, this guy, he's leaning communist, but he's got a Nazi tattoo apparently, or had one. And it's something that's just not a good thing at all. It's the guy's a nutbag, like I said. So you've got this push, And the Democrats realize that they're very limited, right? Their push towards Nazism is something that people just can't, they're not going to get behind. They're not going to rally around. They're not going to like. It's not something that we the people, it's going to resonate on the mainstream. So the Democrats are always going to be relegated to a minority. Even with election stealing, it's going to be hard because, guys like Mamdani, there's no way to steal enough votes for them to win some sort of national election. For him to win in New York City, well, that's one thing. But you see these guys like this, Plattner, he's not a real viable candidate. So, yeah, I mean, that creates a real issue because the Democrats have pushed themselves into that corner. Now, on the GOP side, there's more to this, right? There's a lot more to this, right? So you got Plattner as a disaster. And by the way, this push towards communism in the Democrat side is a big deal, not only because it won't resonate, but I don't know if you guys know this. I did a little homework. And I got some notes I've got to look at to go through this with you. But did you guys know, going back to, the 50s and post-World War II, there was the huge push in America, the anti-communism push. It was a very big deal. And by the way, if you really want a good look at history, take a look at my friend Mel Kay. Mel does a great job at deciphering and analyzing the history and how we've gotten to where we are. But if we look at the legal history and we look back in the Hoover days, all these days where we were really fighting and viewed communism as the enemy, there were a number of things we did. And do you know that there are still communism laws on the books, right? So in 1954, we passed what was called the Communist Control Act. This is still fully codified. And it declared the Communist Party of the United States and any successors an instrumentality of a conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States, right? And essentially, they outlawed the Communist Party. There were a bunch of laws that were created in and around that time, through World War II and post-World War II, to essentially try and prevent these foreign countries from undermining America, which they're doing now. They're doing it through corporate interest rather than political action, but it's still being done, right? It's still being done in a very profound way. There's no question what's happening here, but if you look at what's happening, this Mamdani nonsense and some of this other corruption is occurring, right? It's occurring in a big way. And the communism is kind of growing. So you got the Communist Control Act, and it's not really ever enforced, but it's there, right? If the Communist Party was to run candidates and stuff like that, it basically would allow us to take action. Now, whether it would stand, I don't know, and I'll get to that in a minute. But it's an important thing that's still there. It's a law on the books against communism and against the Communist Party. Now, the Democrat Socialist Party, really no different. That's just a renamed Communist Party. There's not really any difference. So you have the Smith Act, right? The Smith Act was passed, I believe, 1940, right? And it criminalizes knowingly or willfully advocating, abetting, advising, or teaching the duty necessity of overthrowing the U.S. government or any state, right, by force or violence, right? So it was another very important act that was put in place to try and prevent the spread of communism in this country because they knew what kind of a threat it was. Now, some of these acts are going to be pretty limited. There's a case called Brandenburg v. Ohio, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But communism was such a threat to this country. And mind you, the Democrats today are really communists or pretty close to it. They were outlawed. It was literally outlawed. And it's interesting because one of the things that you see is I want you guys to think about the Democrat calls for violent insurrection, right? If you think of all the clips, Pelosi and all these guys talking about, you hit them back and all, the demands for, violent uprisings, those things were part of what was actually outlawed going back historically, because we knew with these violent uprisings and these different things, we knew that foreign countries would try and infiltrate and try and destroy our republic. And they knew that this was a thing. So communism was and remains a serious threat. These totalitarian ideologies, our founding fathers, even in the 20th century, historically, we knew what kind of a threat that was. So we passed laws. You have the Immigration Nationality Act, right? It made it so that non-citizens were inadmissible to the United States if they have been a member of Communist Party or some totalitarian party, right? Now, think about that. It made it illegal, but think about what Biden did, bringing in all these nutbags from all over the world. Think about that. It was openly illegal what he did, but no one did anything about it. You have the Internal Security Act of 1950. It's called the McCarran Act, right? Now, a lot of that's been shot down by some of the Supreme Court precedents, but that's not my point, right? My point is that you had a number of laws, some of which are still on the books, to fight against communism. Why? Because it's literally not compatible with our Constitution. Now, we do have the right to change our Constitution. We can go through the amendment process, and if anybody wants a communist nation, well, try and pass an amendment, right? But that won't happen because they know that there's no support for it. They know that it can't happen. They know it can't work. So communism's been, something that we've been fighting against. The totalitarian nature of what's occurring right now in our country, especially from the Democrats, is something that has been a threat to our country for years, and we actually put laws on the book about it. Now, here's the thing. When we look at this, if we keep going, a lot of those laws were limited, and this is a really important thing because it's being leveraged today. So some of those laws were limited by a case, as a Supreme Court case, and it was called Brandenburg v. Ohio. Now, this is a case that was very protective of the First Amendment. And this is where I get fussy with some of the guys in the Trump administration, Pam Bondi, and her famously saying hate speech isn't protected speech. I have news for you, Pam. I don't know if she ever got the message. I'm glad she's fired. But hate speech is protected speech. In fact, Brandenburg v. Ohio actually included this scumbag, this Clarence Brandenburg. He was a scumbag. He was a Ku Klux Klan leader. He was an absolutely reprehensible human being. But he was speaking out, and the Supreme Court said, well, listen, we don't have to like what you say. It doesn't mean that you don't have the right to say it. Now, that I'm going to get to how that impacts the communist stuff here in a second. But the case, actually, kind of the key excerpt is, quote, the Constitution guarantees of free speech and free press do not permit a state to forbid or prescribe advocacy or the use of force or of law violation, except where such advocacy is directed to inciting or producing imminent lawless action and is likely to incite or produce such action, right? So you can say these horrible things that the Democrats are saying, despite these older laws, because of Brandenburg, right? And basically, Brandenburg had a two-part test. And what they said is to determine whether or not you're not allowed to say something, it has to do two things. So first of all, the speech has to be directed towards inciting or producing imminent lawless action, right? So you have to be saying, listen, I want you guys to go out and riot. I want you guys to go out and burn, baby, burn, do whatever, right? So saying that is one thing. But the speech also, the second part of the test is that the speech also has to be likely to incite or produce such an action, right? So if you in passing say, man, I wish someone would, bomb this or do that, right? If you say it in passing and nobody's paying attention, that's not illegal. If you say it with intent and you're trying to produce such an action, and there's a likelihood that you saying it can produce such an action, that is the only way that we can limit that free speech. That's the First Amendment. That's the Supreme Court. It's still good law today. That's why the Democrats don't get prosecuted for a lot of the things that they say, despite the questionable nature of what they're saying. It's been very, very clear in the Supreme Court that free speech is protected. And I will say this, even though I don't really care for that's an understatement. Even though I despise the rhetoric coming from the Democrats, even though I think it's evil, it's horrible, it's awful, it's reprehensible, I will defend a person's right to speak and to share their positions. Now, if they're advocating for violence and can cause violence, that's the line, right? But I am okay with you saying anything, whether I disagree with it or not. We cannot limit free speech, but we're doing it. We do it now through social media, through public-private partnerships, and we've made sure that all of our public squares, our big public platforms, are places that can be limited by these corporate interests that are generally very globalist and left-leaning. So that's kind of happening, but in terms of the communism and the law and the legislation around communism in this country, the thing that you need to understand is that Brandenburg limited our ability to stop certain things. Now, if you go back to the 50s, one of the things that's big is, the kids were saying prayers in school. They were saying the Pledge of Allegiance. They were learning real American history. And so our kids were growing up and they weren't okay with that. Over the decades since, what's happened is now we've started teaching our kids and brainwashing our kids through the schools, through college, through all these different systems, into being little commies. And so now they come out and they're advocating for this nonsense, and they have the right to talk about it. And the solution isn't to say you can't speak, because that would abridge the First Amendment. We can never abridge the First Amendment. The solution is to quit teaching our kids to be commies. The solution is to start teaching our kids history. The solution is to start teaching our kids to appreciate America, right? That's how we fix this. But, it's been talked about over and over again. We're only a generation away from communism or from totalitarianism of some sort. And that's being proven right now as we keep brainwashing our kids into being dumber and dumber and believing this nonsense communist propaganda. Unfortunately for the Democrats, and fortunately for America, most people just can't get behind it. They're just not there. They're not going to be there. It doesn't work. It's never going to work. It's never going to be a thing. So that makes this whole Plattner thing kind of an issue, right? He's not a good candidate. Now, by the way, Plattner also, which shouldn't be a huge surprise in light of his kind of Nazi leanings, is not well loved by AIPAC. AIPAC does not like him. And that leads to quite a few interesting things. Now, when you look at Plattner, because he's trending right now on Twitter, let me show you what you see here. Let's see. Let's bring this up. Okay. Here you see. Now, MTG says, I do find it interesting that Plattner is hated by AIPAC, and rape accusations show up years later from a woman who dated him. Now, the accusations come from 2021. She hasn't said anything. Now, all of a sudden, she is. Now, I'm going to say this. It's not uncommon for someone who is raped or sexually abused to not say anything for a number of years. So I'm not making a judgment call there. But MTG goes on and says, AIPAC hated Massey too, and they rolled out fake AI ads showing lies about him in a sex trio with AOC and Ilhan Omar. I certainly hope any woman who is raped or sexually assaulted is safe and gets justice. That's why it's so important to report immediately and not wait years. Although I'm going to say not all women can do that. So we got to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt there. Then she goes on to say something really important. Although the Epstein victims have been trying for years to get justice, and unfortunately AIPAC, their donors and friends, love that elite group of men they're accusing, so that's not really working out. I'm not taking sides, just making observations. I thought that was a very interesting post by MTG, and actually I think it's kind of astute, to be real honest. But if you scroll down, I also want to highlight another one, because Data Republican is always very smart about what she has to say. And this guy, this Ruben Galago, says accusations against Graham Partler are troubling and deeply serious. I'm rescinding my endorsement. And Data Republican calls this guy out. Says, hello, Senator Galago. I don't care about the allegations against Plattner, or you don't care about the allegations against Plattner. You never did. You still don't care. I agree with her. Here's what everyone knows happened. Graham Plattner had lots of baggage yesterday, including allegations from other women. One more woman got added to the pile. Yes, it was a serious allegations, but he had plenty of other disqualifying allegations before, including that tattoo, being a communist member of the DSA, a spousal and girlfriend misconduct, and others. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and I think this is really important. I'm going to bet on what actually happened. Democratic leadership got spooked, not because of any particular accusation, but because the DSA backlash, Democrat Socialists of America backlash, threatening to take over their own party. This is the key, folks. The Democrat Party knows that the DSA is taking over their party. They know it's happening and they're terrified. And so the Democrats are fighting back. They need the UniParty system to remain alive, which means the Democrats have to remain at least viable as visually, right? They have to at least pretend that they're not nuts. These guys now, the Democrat Socialists, are openly talking about the fact that they're communists, they're nutbags. The Democrat Party knows that to keep the charade going, the Democrats have to look like they're reasonable, and so that they can pretend they're fighting with the Republicans, right? So she goes on to say, they knew your Senate race is critical in taking over congressional control. They'd either have to spend a whole election cycle defending why they're backing a communist, or they could take the most convenient next item in a long list of disqualifying in any sane world criteria that you'd already racked up. You were and always were an untrustworthy person to ever run for Senate competitively. That you got this far as an indictment of the character of our country. Bring McCarthyism back. I love data Republicans. She's awesome. But I think she's dead right. I think she's very correct. I think what's going on here, we have a UniParty system, okay? Susan Collins is no more Republican than the old school Democrats. In fact, I've got a laundry list here. Let me see if I can put, where did I put this? Brandenburg. Okay. So Collins is a rhino. Lifetime conservative score from Heritage is 24 to 46%. She votes against anything conservative. She's known as bipartisan because she hates Republicans. She's opposed to everything that Trump does. She just absolutely is against Trump. She didn't endorse him in 2016, called him unsuitable. She doesn't like foreign aid, tech spending packages, et cetera, that he's doing. Doesn't like his style, doesn't like him, period. She's moderate on social issues. She's all of them. Pick all of them. I mean, it doesn't matter. She's maybe not pro-abortion, but not far off. She's just everything that we hate. She opposed full Obamacare repeal without replacement, right? So she didn't want to repeal Obamacare. She was against that. She's just across the board, literally everything that the Republicans don't want, the Republican base. Collins is horrible, right? The Democrats, though, cannot run an outright communist against her. A straight up Democrat, socialist, communist guy in the Senate is going to go too far in terms of making the Democrats not seem even sane or viable. Mainstream America simply will not tolerate these views. They're not okay with it. That you see because of how unpopular Ilhan Omar is, some of these others, they're a drag on the whole Democrat Party. And having guys like Plattner in there would be an absolute disaster. So the Democrats did what the Democrats do. They just looked for a reason to get this guy out. I mean, the guy has numerous issues in terms of, his sexcapades over the years, which, for Bill Clinton was a feather in his cap. Barack Obama, he's married to a dude, right? He's married to a lovely first lady, Big Mike. Michelle Obama, who doesn't have a penis. It's a microphone that fell in her pants. We've been through all this, but sexual deviance is like a core thing for the Democrat Party. It's like if you haven't been a sexual deviant, you're not there. So, the idea that that's a problem for the Democrats, it's ridiculous. Over and over again, they just cover it up. And if they really wanted this guy in there, they just deny it and cover it up and, go after the woman like they usually do. The Democrats, by the way, always do this. The Democrats use sex, sexual violence, and all that sort of stuff. It's just a tool for them. If the Republicans do it, they attack. If the Democrats do it, it's a high five. Unless it's a Democrat who's going to be an embarrassment to the party, like Plattner, then they just simply, they shut it down. So that's a thing. In this case, there's no real good reason for what's happening. It's not okay. What's happening is it's a debacle. So, and the Democrats' real reason for getting rid of this guy is they need to keep up the appearance that we have a two-party system, right? The Democrats, the Republicans, both are controlled by the UniParty. And if you look, nothing is happening right now that's not UniParty. Well, only things moving through Congress are things that build out the digital control grid, the digital prison, the track and trace, the move towards CBDCs. I mean, these globalist agenda items are the only things moving. We can't get reform on elections. We can't get reform on big pharma. It doesn't matter how popular it is. They won't, it doesn't move. The UniParty is alive and well in Washington. The UniParty is okay with Susan Collins. If the Democrats lose and you got Susan Collins, it really doesn't matter because she's close enough to a Democrat that you're still going to get a UniParty win. So the UniParty would rather have a Susan Collins win than a Plattner, because Plattner's going to be an embarrassment and he's going to make the Democrats less viable as a party across the board. So I think that's what's happening here. If you kind of look at this in the bigger picture, I think what you have is a situation where the Democrats, they got a little bit spooked, as Dad Republican said, because the Democrat socialists are making too many gains. The Democrats at core agree with the Democrat socialists, but they know they have to pretend to be more moderate. And if they don't, they won't be a viable party. And without the Democrats being a viable party, then everybody's going to notice that the Republicans have become the old Democrat Party. There is no actual mega conservative party in this country right now, as demonstrated by, pick your thing, John Thune making sure that we can't have recess appointments, the Congress, pushing, they've actually tried to push legislative immunity for pesticides, kind of like you have for vaccines. Trump got it done anyways through the Supreme Court, but you see, they're trying to unify our army and give our army over to Israel. All these different things. It doesn't matter where you go. The Republicans are not doing the right thing. They won't reform anything with healthcare. They oppose everything Bobby Kennedy stood for, despite the fact that Bobby Kennedy is the reason we have Trump as a win as president. That, by the way, is demonstrated through internal polling. Kennedy brought over 9 million votes to Trump. Over 9 million. Without Maha, there is no MAGA in the 2024 election. MAGA would have lost. The election steal would have been enough for Kamala to win. So, you may not want to talk about that, but Maha was a big force. But we still can't get anything done because it's a uniparty, and the uniparty doesn't want to fix health. They want to control health. They want pharmaceutical control. They want all that sort of stuff. So anyways, to be able to continue to ignore the will of the people and to do the wrong thing, there has to at least be a pretense that we have two parties so we can be mad at the Democrats instead of mad at all of our elected officials, right? That's what's going on. This was very frustrating. Speaking of the digital control system, the digital prison, all that sort of stuff, Supreme Court decided not to take up a case, and they're going to allow Texas to continue to enforce a law that requires app stores to verify buyers' ages and get parental consent for minors to download apps. Why is this so important, right? So you've got the Texas App Store Accountability Act. And this was just like the Kids Act. It's something that these elected scumbags put out there, and they say it's to protect kids. Now, I got to be honest with you. I don't even know if porn apps exist. Maybe they do. I'm sure they probably do. But I don't know. It's not hard to watch your kid's phone. I do it. We get the Apple Family thing, and I just, but kids can't download certain stuff. I got it set up. It's real simple, right? My kids get into any trouble, I'm going to know it. My kids don't have social media. I know it's abusive, right? It's terrible of me. But it's because they don't need it. There's no benefit to a kid having social media. There's a lot of risk because if you say something stupid as a kid, it's there forever for the rest of your life. But, there's no real benefit to it. You can control what your kid, you don't need an App Store Accountability Act, but they do need an App Store Accountability Act. It's not because it's going to protect kids, though, right? The App Store Accountability Act is all about digital track and trace. So I want to get into that because there's a lot to that. Now, the App Store Accountability Act defines within it personal data. right? Because they say that they're going to protect kids and protect their personal data. And so personal data in the App Store Accountability Act means, quote, any information, including sensitive data that is linked or reasonably linkable to an identified or identifiable individual. Reasonably linkable. The term includes pseudonyms data, pseudonymous data, when the data is used by a person or process determines the purpose and means of processing the data in conjunction with additional information. It can reasonably link the data to an identified or identifiable information. It does not, really important, the term does not include de-identified data or publicly available information. Why was that included? Right? So they say we're going to protect your kids' personal data, right? But then they exclude de-identified or publicly available data, right? That's the key. That's the lie. And that's how you know this is digital track and trace, right? Well, let me explain this to you guys. This is complicated, and bear with me. So de-identified data removes direct personal identifiers, right? Name, social security number, full address, phone. But it keeps what are called quasi-identifiers, right? Such as date of birth, gender, zip code, race, dates of events, different things like that, right? So when this quasi-identified data is combined, it can actually be used to kind of identify a person, right? So they're allowing this quasi-identified data because they know that the AI systems out there can use this de-identified data to actually identify a person, right? So what they do is they match this quasi-identified data across all sorts of de-identified data sets. There are massive, massive AI systems doing this all the time right now. For example, what they'll do is they'll take your zip code, your birth date, your gender, and a hospital discharge, and link that to public voter registrations, and they'll use that to kind of recover a name, and they can do that, right? They'll look for rare or unique combinations of attributes, right? Things that are kind of odd. De-identified Netflix movie ratings, and they'll take that and they'll look at public IMDb profiles, AOL search queries, distinctive patterns, all these different New York City taxi trip data. They'll use all these things. They'll put it all together. You get in a cab, they know you're in a cab. When all these things kind of pull together, what happens is you have so many different things that are all fairly unique that the AI can break this down and figure out who you are, what you're doing, where you're at, and put it together and identify you. Now, here's the thing. Here's the catch. Once you've been re-identified, so once they re-identify using the quasi de-identified data, then that re-identified person becomes part of a single data set. Those data sets are tracked, they're traced, they're controlled, they're bought, they're sold, and they'll use that re-identified data set to triangulate against other data so that they can track you and trace you completely, right? You want to know where you're driving, where you drove last week? You want to know who you visited, who you talked to, who you communicated with? Every single thing you do is trackable and traceable. Every single thing. They can use cell phone data, these towers, these different things. They're de-identified. But once you're re-identified using this quasi-identified data, they can then use that in conjunction with this de-identified cell phone data, de-identified all these different things, and get these persistent profiles that really track and trace every single thing you do. Who you communicate with, who you're sitting next to, who you're spending time with. It's all traceable, everything. And it can be done in almost real time, right? You can reconstruct movements, you can reconstruct where someone was. And the big thing for this is they want to predict future actions based on patterns. This is a very, very big thing, and it's happening. It's something that is happening on a profound level. Now, I know some of you guys in the comments are talking about Tyler Robinson. Yeah. If they used everything they have, they could absolutely break down what happened. It's a lie to say that they couldn't. It's an absolute lie. It's 100%. The stuff that's available, I will tell you as an attorney, that if I really needed to leverage certain things and to get certain data, and I was legally justified in doing it, what I could pull out is profound. Most attorneys don't even know how much they could find, because you really got to know how to dig into this. But it's all out there, right? It's all out there. It's kept secret from most of us. People don't want, the people who control this data don't want you to know how much they have on you. They don't want you to realize that they really can track and trace everything about you. We're already there. The digital prison is being built. They already have the data. It's just a matter of whether they're going to use it, right? So, I mean, I've made peace long ago. Whatever I'm doing, whatever I got, I mean, yeah, there's ways to get around it. For some of my whistleblower stuff and some of the things that I do, I have, there are ways to make sure that you are not tracked and traced, but they are very, very cumbersome. You have to do a lot to get out of that. So you might as well make peace. You don't really have any secrets at this point. But anyways, it's kind of an interesting thing. Now, the AI thing is really important because it can do this, and it can get this data in a really profound way, and it can do it very quickly. And it's very good at predicting behavior, right? So they can predict kind of what you're going to do based on all sorts of criteria. And remember, this gets a lot worse when AI is implemented on government databases, which is what Palantir is doing, right? Now, when you get to Palantir and government databases, then it becomes a whole nother level, because guess what the government has? They have your electronic medical records. They have your real ID data. They have your Bank Secrecy Act. They have your tax returns. They have your Anti-Money Laundering Act data. They have all these different things that are happening. So the government data, which, by the way, now they even have your biometric data. So when you walk by that flock camera and it takes your picture, it shows you, and there's a whole file on you. It helps to build who you are, where you go, what you do. Everything is about track and trace. Everything is happening. They're building the prison. Now, they aren't going to use any of this. They don't want you to know this, because if you know it, people would have a fit. People would have a fit to know that they don't have secrets anymore. Everybody likes to have their own private life, and it likes to have certain things that they do. And so people don't realize there are no secrets anymore. So you got to understand, the government isn't going to do anything with it right this minute, but they're building, and they're building. And at some point they will, right? And they do have the ability, without sharing everything that they got or how they get it, to really make your life miserable if they want to. We're at that point now. So, as we look at this, and we look at the Texas's App Store Accountability Act, you have to understand that is only being done because it gives us another piece of identifying information to help re-identify, using this QI information, your kids. They want to start tracking your kids much younger. Kids that don't have a public profile, they're not on social media or whatever. Well, that's a problem. These app stores, their idea is to make sure that it's inconvenient. So the kids, just upload your kid's ID, or to connect your kid to you, or connect your kid here, or connect your kid there. It's no problem, right? But what that's really about is developing this QI data so that they can triangulate and track and trace your kid from birth, or as close to it as they can get. They want anyone that's a thinking person, that's able to use a phone, use anything. They want to be able to track and trace. That's what this is about. So, again, this stuff keeps moving forward. This is in red Texas, Republican Texas. There is no Republican Party. There's a UniParty, and there's some nutbags. The Democrat Socialists, they're the nutbags. The rest of it's a UniParty. That is where we are, folks. All right, a couple other little housekeeping things, and then we're going to call her a night. We got a little bit of a late start here. Gavin Newsom. I'm sorry, you have to laugh at this. Gavin Newsom is accusing Trump of election tyranny and messing with elections. Gavin Newsom. I'm serious, right? because there's outright fraud continuing to go on in the California elections, and Trump's taken steps on it or wants to take steps on it, and so Newsom has said that anyone that interferes with our election or our count will be prosecuted. Now, Trump's made some changes federally, and he's looking at some prosecutions and some different things. And what Newsom is threatening is that anybody who helps Trump or works with Trump or does anything to try and show that there's election fraud in California is going to be prosecuted under state law. He knows that he can't stop or preempt federal law. So what he's trying to do is threaten the people that might help Trump with the prosecution of people like him by telling them that California will prosecute you, right? So California will prosecute you for helping Trump enforce actual election law. Think about that. It's literal insanity. The fact that Gavin Newsom would call Trump an election tyrant after what happened in 2020 is pretty mind-blowing. Now, grant you, the Republicans use election fraud too. They use it to make sure that you've got rhinos. But yeah, the idea that Gavin Newsom would say this is pretty ripe for some memes and for some jokes. So I think the whole thing is a bit absurd. Let's see, what else do we got here? A couple other little things. Caroline Leavitt. Let me show you this. Caroline Leavitt. I don't know why, but this picture is pissing people off. Apparently people are bothered by her sticking her butt out. How she's standing, I guess, which I mean, really, is this what we've got? Now, I will say that this Patrick Holly guy, who I have no idea who he is, Caroline Leavitt thinks Gen Z needs to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and marry a 60-year-old New Hampshire real estate developer, resort landlord who you meet during your failed congressional run. Stop whining, start dining. I got a boot out of that because Levitt's made some combinations made some really stupid statements about how Gen Z needs to pick themselves up and pull themselves up and do this and do that. I mean, Leavitt, she was broke until she got hooked into the Trump thing and won some political stuff. She married some rich guy. I mean, good for her. I don't care that she's doing it, but it's tone deaf and hypocritical what she's saying. I don't mind Leavitt. I think she does a pretty good job in her job. And I don't care what she does, but I mean, she is tone deaf as hell. I think that's why she's doing it. But Mary Bowden noted, why do young women pose in photos with their butt sticking out? I don't know. Why not? I don't really care about that, but it's just an interesting thing because I do think that Levitt's comments about people pulling themselves up by the bootstraps that's a bit much for me. So Fed paper, this was a big deal. Like I said, I'm just trying to get through these last few things, but this one I really wanted to hit. So there was a paper put out by the Fed that linked Biden's illegal immigration to the 30% of recent home price rises, right? So they're talking about it having a huge impact on the reason that housing is so expensive. And it's an interesting thing because when you look at the paper, there's actually some errors in it. One of the things that's in there is that the paper was based on 7 million illegals, right? So they use government data to say that Biden left in 7 million, but estimates are that it's way higher. So the reality is that one of the things that they talk about in this paper that I thought was important was they claim that these illegals had basically a one for one local employment kind of impact, right? So they didn't really have a negative impact on jobs. They were just taking the jobs that no American wants, et cetera, et cetera. But they're claiming that explained the 30% growth in employment was essentially that we had more workers. And that's not actually true. There's a lot more workers came in than there were jobs. And if they were actually counted properly, it would show that those numbers are false. But, who cares about facts? It's from the Fed. It's only partially right. But I do think that they're accurate. And it's interesting that they show that the illegals did have a pretty big impact on the increase of home prices and rents. which is a pretty big deal. Last but not least, Judge Sparkle Suknanen. I don't know what her name is, but her Judge Sparkles, because her name is actually Sparkle. That's for real. We have a judge on the bench, Judge Sparkle, and I don't know anything about her. I really don't. I don't even. But apparently, she shot down some of the changes Trump was making to the systematic alien verification for entitlement system, SAVE system. Now, this is different from the SAVE Act. This is a SAVE database, and it's used to. Trump was making some changes, make it a little bit easier to get the illegals off the voter rolls, and the judge shot it down. It's a bad ruling. It was kind of nonsensical, but just another judge doing another thing that they probably shouldn't be doing. Most importantly, though, and I think the real key here is that I was very surprised to know that we had a judge who literally is named Judge Sparkle, but she was a Biden appointee, so I guess we shouldn't be surprised. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully with fewer tech issues, and we appreciate your support. TomRenz.com, GiveSendGo.com/RenzLaw. Thanks for watching. We'll be back soon.